Now will we see the magic?
All right, where's Murray? Okay, who is it?
This is Jesus, kid.
Know then that it is the year 10,191.
Yes, we are bored. We're all bored now.
Hi, good night.
Good night.
Hello and welcome to Mary vs. the Movies with your host Mary Jones.
And Dennis Ling.
And I have no idea what this movie is that we're watching.
Liquid Sky 2.
It is... Where would you go after the first one? No, we're going in a completely opposite direction. Yeah, okay, so Liquid Sky, last episode was avant-garde and New York art scene and full of drugs and sex and aliens and all kinds of weird stuff. This week, we are watching a Merchant and Ivory production that is an adaptation of an E.M. Foster novel. Foster, whatever. A Room with a View. Now, I don't actually know anything about this. Okay, so this is a Merchant Ivory film. Now, Merchant Ivory, what they're most known for in America, though, is for a type of mannered, not exactly drawing room. That's not quite right. But a type of mannered adaptation of literature sometimes. I mean, it's like PBS, but with better production values. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that as an insult, as somebody who watched a lot of, like, I watched all of Upstairs, Downstairs. Okay, I've watched Downton Abbey. I've watched all that stuff. Like, I don't mean that as an insult, but like, this is basically the same sort of thing, but on film, good sets, all the rest of it.
You know what? I actually forgot that Remains of the Day and A Room with a View were two different things.
Oh my God. Remains of the Day is a great movie. That came out in 93. That's from a novel from like the late 80s, I think, but set in like the 30s to the, what, like post-war, I guess?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is post-war. Anyway, Anthony Hopkins, whatever. Until I actually sit down and think about it, I do confuse the film we're going to watch, though, with that movie, A Room with a View. Last year, we watched a different E.M. Foster adaptation, Passage to India. So at least I kind of get the idea of the time period. As far as I know, this film is set in England, sometime in the early 20th century. And so, like, Merchant and Ivory, yeah, it's, like I said, it's what you think of as... It's funny. I think when I originally was going to write a blurb for it, I said, well, this is middle brow art. And that's probably not wrong. But I also don't mean that as an insult.
Weren't you just talking about the pre-Raphaelites as that?
I wrote a whole thing in the newsletter. By the way, you can sign up for our newsletter, even if you're not a subscriber to the Patreon, by emailing us and just asking to be signed up for it. But anyway, I was writing in the newsletter about when we went to the art museum last weekend. Yeah, the pre-Raphaelites are kind of now seen as a middle brow thing. You know, it's a lot of dreamy looking women in long gowns in a quasi medieval setting, and it's something you put up in your dorm room if you're a certain dreamy eyed college student like I was. I assume they're still selling those posters. I don't know. I mean, they were a few years ago. I don't know what college is like now. I'm sure everybody's much more hardcore than I ever was because they're all Gen Z now and I'm a relic. And that's fine. Whatever. Time moves on. But the point being...
Are people into art the same way?
I have no idea what the kids are into.
Yeah,
we don't have children.
Kids.
I don't know what the kids like.
Yeah.
You know? Like, I barely got a handle on millennials and now like Gen Z's coming up and they're just eating everybody and spitting them out. And I'm just like, okay, fine. This is how time works. I don't know what the kids want. So to some extent, I feel like Merchant and Ivory are in some ways, I don't want to say that they're the pre-Raphaelites of the 1980s, but the pre-Raphaelites actually started off as, rather bold and daring and a rejection of what art was at the time in terms of the British, the Royal Academy and how art was supposed to be made. And like they had all these, they were socialists and they had all these, ideas about how you do things and how you make art and you have to go out into the field and really paint from life and all this stuff. And If you're looking at like a John Everett Millay painting, it's amazing, and it's almost hard to look at because he draws everything is in detail at all the time, and but at the same time, like all their subject matter is like coming from like literature and Shakespeare and King Arthur and all that stuff. Merchant and Ivory are kind of Preraphilites in that adapting literature, I guess. It becomes very mannered. I don't know, and the thing is like, but I like it, right? Like this, like I said, it's like PBS, but with production values. And look, I'm somebody who's watched I, Claudius many times, but like those sets are made of cardboard. You can see the walls wobble. Mm-hmm. You're not going to see walls wobble in a Merchant and Ivory production. I don't know. The impression I don't even know if it's an impression because I have seen at least one of their films. It's very stiff upper lip. And I mean, granted, Remains of the Day is kind of saying, hey, maybe being stiff upper lip is actually going to ruin your life.
Have you seen other Merchant and Ivory films?
I don't know. Hold on. Let me look up and see if I have, because that's actually a very good question.
I was saying, so I think I've only seen Remains of the Day, as that's the only one I've seen. So maybe I'm just basing my whole view on one film.
Well, I'll tell you this. James Ivory of Merchant and Ivory wrote the screenplay. Okay, so like Howard's End. Have you seen Howard's End?
I don't think I have.
Howard's End is really good.
Huh.
But it's also that kind of mannered sort of production. James Ivory wrote the screenplay for Call Me By Your Name. Some people like that movie, some people don't. I kind of liked it.
Oh, I didn't see that. You saw it.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah. So anyway, this movie, I don't know what happens in it. It's about having a room with a view. I have no idea. I assume it's set sometime in maybe the 20s or 30s. I assume it's a romance of some kind, that it's some sort of domestic drama in that sense.
So, love triangle?
Possibly. Yeah, definitely.
Death? Any death?
Could be. Sure.
Think a head rolls off?
I don't know that we're going to get a good violent death. I'm not sure that we'll have any beheadings. But there could be a death, sure.
Sorry, I'm going by the Joe Bob Briggs. How many heads roll? Feet roll.
First of all, getting a foot to roll, that's impressive. They are not made to do that.
I think he had that as a chart once. Like
a foot roll chart?
Yeah.
That's a lot of work. All right, so going in blind, shall we go watch the film?
Yeah, let's view this thing.
Don't fall in love with me yet. We only recently met. True, I'm in love with you, but you might decide I'm a nut. Give me a week or two to go absolutely cuckoo. Then when you see your error, then you can flee in terror. Like everybody else does. I only tell you this cause I'm easy to get rid of. But not if you fall in love. Now that I'm on the make, and if you make a mistake, my heart will certain.
I can't wait to go to Italy. Seriously,
we're going there.
Yeah, that we were supposed to go. We saved up for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Socking away money. You were going to turn 50. It was like, yes, let's go to Italy. You were an art student and all that stuff. You never got to go abroad with it. Let's go. That's like the place.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, your 50th birthday was in 2021.
Yeah.
Which meant, no, we didn't go anywhere. In fact, like the vaccines weren't even out yet.
Yeah.
When it's your birthday.
I guess we went to Tennessee.
We went to Tennessee.
Was that 2021 or 2022?
What are you talking about?
Oh, when we went to see the eclipse.
That was 2017.
Was it?
Yes.
Oh.
That was 5 years earlier than what you think it was.
I don't know.
Oh, boy.
I don't know what time it is.
Just living in an eternal now, aren't you?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so the movie, it opens in Italy.
Yep.
And in Florence, which is on our trip.
Yep.
I realize I feel a little weird saying, yeah, we're going on vacation to Italy. Well, we have like a Patreon. We're not spending the Patreon money on the trip, okay? This is something we saved up for a long time.
It would pay for maybe like a meal.
The Patreon? Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I always feel a little weird saying like, hey, I'm doing this really cool thing. Thanks for the money, guys. So, anyway, So the film is set in like 1907. So you've got that whole La Belle Epoque, Edwardian summer, all before the First World War type of world. And the book was actually written around the time it's set too. So it's not like this is looking backwards in terms of the book that was written, which is kind of fun. Actually, so often these things get tinged with like, oh, we know what's going to happen, but this film doesn't indulge in any of that nonsense.
The book sort of though.
Does it? Because the book was written in 1908.
The book was written in 1908, but he added an afterword in 1953.
Don't do that.
I know.
Come on, man.
And it wasn't like a Tolkien like please stop telling me it's an allegory thing. It was actually like what happened to them afterwards, and it's kind of a downer.
Do I want to know what happens?
Nah.
No. Okay, don't tell me then. Yeah. Absolutely. No.
We have the book, so I guess you can see it then.
Yeah, well, let me be disappointed on my own time. I'm too busy enjoying this movie.
I did like what even E.M. Forster said, like, I know it's not my best book, but it might be my nicest book.
It's charming.
Yeah.
It's an absolutely charming story. So we watched this with my mom and sister. They had a kind of interesting complaints in that my mom said, is this supposed to be a comedy or not? Because I think this is played as a drama, but you would think it's a comedy. I'm like, well, no, it is a comedy. And my sister's just like, I was taught E.M. Forster never wrote comedies. And I understand where that's coming from because I think people don't quite know what to do with, I don't know. Like, I keep thinking about how Passage to India, which is also him, like the beginning is kind of funny and it's about all, these,
a lot like this.
A lot like this until what happens in it happens. Yeah. And then the rest of it is actually rather tense and fascinating, right? And I still intend to read A Passage to India at some point. So yeah, I have a paperback of this book as well. I have not read it yet because I don't know. I just end up with books sometimes. Like, I don't know. It's like a classic rom-com, honestly. Yeah. You said it was like Moonstruck.
It is like Moonstruck.
And it kind of is the same plot.
Kind of this stiff guy. She's kind of settling for him and she thinks she has her whole life planned out and stuff. And then this weirdo comes along and ruins everything.
But makes her happy.
Yeah.
And that's what matters.
And there's like a lot of older people involved.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of like older actors in this who are exactly who you kind of want in this movie, to be honest.
Yeah.
And kind of like in Moonstruck, they had a perfect... this was such a perfect cast.
Like, I feel like Moonstruck's a little better because it's better examining the lives of the older...
Oh, no. Yeah. Moonstruck is a perfect movie. Yeah. Let's not... Like, you were the one who pointed out, the plot's not dissimilar.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this is as good as Moonstruck. Honestly, I don't think any film we've covered is.
Yeah, but I will say that we seem to have a type of movie that we both like.
That's true. Yeah.
This is kind of falls in that.
Well, when we got together, I was with a guy who was definitely wrong for me. And I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking about it right now, and it's not that it's not dissimilar either. And then had like a whole breakup with him, and then here you are, the charming weirdo.
Well, thank you.
And here we are 20 years later, actually. It'll be 20 years in April, I guess, that we started going out. So I brought up the cast. Oh my God, is this a cast?
Yeah.
So this is Helena Bonham Carter's first film.
Wasn't she in like a indie art film or something before this?
Dennis, I'm going by Wikipedia.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, never mind.
I mean, that's good.
I stand down.
Exactly. Definitely nobody changed the facts in there. This is an IMDb. You can trust Wikipedia. But
I think she was like 18 going on 19.
She was very young.
Yeah.
Oh my God, she's so young.
You barely recognize her.
I did not realize that was her. And then I'm like kind of looking down at the cast list. I mean, and of course, like the words are coming up on the screen and I'm not thinking because I'm too busy thinking about the fact that, I like this, Renaissance scroll work title cards and the music is Puccini. And I'm just like, oh, geez, you're really just shooting your shot right away, aren't you guys?
I was thinking, like, what if like Maximum Overdrive had those titles?
Oh, man. A little bit of a different film. Yeah. Actually, it'd be great if it actually starts off that way and then just goes right into being Maximum Overdrive instead of AC/DC. And instead, you start this with some AC/DC. Hell's bells, man. Yeah. Boy, this is exactly the kind of film I thought it was going to be, and yet it was somehow better. This is a film sort of taking the drawing room drama that you think of when you think of Merchant Ivory films. but it's sort of tweaking it, which is funny because they're just starting to kind of make the kind of film that everybody thinks that they are.
What I didn't realize is that they'd had like a 20-year experience before then.
I did not know.
I didn't know that. Like, we only think of them as like this, 7-year period or something.
That's true, and it's actually a much longer period of time that they made films than you realize. In fact, so before we even get into the film for a second, just talking about Merchant and Ivory, James Ivory, still alive. He's like 95. I did not realize he's American. He was from California.
Huh.
Ismail Merchant is actually Indian, I believe. He's Indian Muslim. So neither of them are English at all.
Right.
And yet you think of them as English period dramas. So, and then their writer, the person who's their
Ruth Jhabvala, I think is how you say her name.
And she's like German and Jewish.
She is, I think, Czechoslovakian, but had immigrated to England. I feel like it was 39,
Jesus.
so she was the last wave.
Oh God.
But she was in England for a while. She married an Indian.
Yeah.
And then eventually moved to England and then America and stuff. She kind of moved around.
Yeah, I think actually when the Merchant Ivory company got started, they were actually in India, I think.
Yeah, and she was living in India at the time. She was
Right.
writing, and for a while people thought she was Indian, but she was by marriage.
Yeah, with her last name. So I guess they must have started in India. I don't know how Ivory got to India, but
I think he was a documentary filmmaker.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we brought up Helena Bonham Carter. So this is, we'll say it's her first film. It's a pretty early film for Daniel Day-Lewis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he did My Beautiful Andrette.
Which is our next film. I did not realize he was also in that film the same year.
I thought this was your doing.
It is not. It is not my
I thought
doing.
you had some kind of plan.
I had no plan. I have a spreadsheet and I forget who's in what. It's just a long spreadsheet of 500 movies that we have to get through. Not have to get through, want to get through. And
sure, keep your story.
No, I had no idea. I just I think at one point I wrote down a bunch of English films from the 1980s, and I was just like, oh, I should see. You know what it is? I saw some sort of thing on Amazon of a history of British film, and I was just writing down movies from the 80s to see, and I guess I just had them one after the other because they came out the same year. Did not realize Daniel Day-Lewis is in both films.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a coincidence. But so this is a very early film for him though. And it's funny because it's not that he's unrecognizable, but it takes you a second to realize it's him because his performance is so closed. Knowing who he is and where he goes from here.
Yeah.
It's an interesting performance. What's the right word? Clenched.
You know what? We were trying to think of who does he remind us of?
Yeah.
I was thinking, what about Billy Zane in Titanic? A little bit, but because less bombastic. Yeah, not as menacing.
He's not menacing in the same way, but he is a snob and pretentious.
Yeah,
he's sort of Billy Zane mixed with Uriah Heep from David Copperfield in that he's a bit supercilious. There's something.
He's really silly.
I wish. I mean, he is really silly. There is a scene where he tries to kiss Helena Bonham Carter, and I mean, it's funny, but it's just kind of oh my God, you dork. Ugh. Because his glasses get in the way, and not in a way that's charming, but in a way that's just so awkward and off-putting, and you're just ugh. It's like watching a slug trying to kiss somebody.
It's like a John Hughes film nerd.
Yeah, but you're definitely not rooting for this guy.
No,
not at all.
One of those other nerds.
Yeah. He's a bad nerd. He's the kind of nerd who, you'll sit there and you'll kind of talk about how you really like this movie, and then he'll tell you about how you're kind of wrong about it.
Well,
actually. It's okay, you say you like that band because you're wearing that t-shirt, but name the track listing of their first 3 albums in order.
Oh, can you?
No.
Oh. All right.
I can never. I will always get it wrong. Even R.E.M's Murmur, which I have listened to 1,000 times,
and we're gonna go see.
And we're gonna go to that thing probably by the time this comes out. But I can't remember the track listing of things. Come on, man. Anyway, but he is that kind of a nerd.
But you're a fan.
But that's the kind of guy that he would be, right? But that with money, and that's the worst part, because he has more money than Helena Bonham Carter in this, but they're going to get married. And so there's a sort of condescension he has towards everything, and especially towards her. He doesn't really, he sees him almost as doing himself a favor, because who she should be with is Julian Sands.
I was trying to think of someone.
Someone he reminds you of?
Yeah. Oh, what's his name from Say Anything?
You know, it's funny. I was just thinking Lloyd Dobler.
Yeah, he's got some Lloyd Dobler vibes.
I think I think it goes in the other direction, but I think they're both of a certain type of romantic hero, and I mean romance with a small R, not a capital R, because so basically he's a free spirit.
Yeah.
Right. And he's, big romantic gestures, but at the same time, what I like is that the film shows how they get to know each other because he becomes friends with her brother. And so it's not just, yes, they meet in Italy the first time, and because they're both kind of swept away by, Italy and romance actual in, the land of, coming from there. There's that whole kind of, you're on your summer vacation and you meet the guy and you kind of fall in love, but then you go back home. Because that's kind of what happens in this, you know?
Greece.
Yeah. Okay, I guess it is a little like Greece. Oh, God. So they meet in Italy. She's on tour there with her, I guess...
Cousin.
Her older
cousin.
Yeah.
Spinster cousin.
Spinster cousin, played by Maggie Smith. And Maggie Smith, first of all, if you're making this kind of movie, who else would be in it but Maggie Smith? Obvious.
And say, well, we should get another amazing actress of that age. Okay, we'll get Judi Dench.
Right. It's like, of course this movie has Judi Dench in it. Of course this movie has Maggie Smith in it.
And they're both amazing.
I think this is where this all comes from.
Yeah.
This movie is why you have something like Downton Abbey. This is a good version of that, though. Even better, you have Denholm Elliott in it. Brody, yes. He actually was up for, I think, Best Supporting Actor. Mm-hmm. And he plays Julian Sand's father, like a kind of a quasi-radical. I don't know if they say what he does for a living or anything, but he's there with his son, Julian Sands, touring Italy as well. They're all staying in the same hotel.
In the book, apparently, Cecil says, I think they're socialists.
Yeah, and that definitely comes across in this film because when they're touring different places, Denholm, it's like his character is like, they're not paying the workers, they're not doing this, he's like making all these kind of radical statements.
Like this clergyman says, like, this was built on faith. He's like, that's just another way of saying the workers aren't paid enough.
And he's right.
Yeah.
So,
But he makes these pronunciations like loud and obnoxiously. And
oh, I don't think it's obnoxious.
Well, yeah, some people might not.
I think he's perfectly in the right there. Look, when we go to Italy, have the bail money ready. So they're in Italy, and George and Lucy kind of fall for each other, during this vacation. They go on all these different tours and stuff. And, there's one day they go out on a picnic, and she goes off to look for, like the entire group is going for a picnic. Don't misunderstand. So this is like being part of a tour group. They meet in a field of like poppies and stuff. And he suddenly embraces her and kisses her and stuff. And she's just like, okay, And I like that because, of course, at the time this is, and I like how they build up to this scene where this would be so scandalous because, their cab driver, it's a hansom cab situation. So horses, their cab driver, was riding with his girlfriend, and, the one minister just freaks out and makes them eject the girl just because like he's holding her hand.
Yeah.
So like the idea that then Lucy is in a field with George and they start making out, like this is unbelievably scandalous, right? Because it's 1907.
And she's kind of encouraged in this kind of, well, not encouraged, but Judi Dench, her what's the novelist's name?
Judi Dench plays a romance novelist named
Eleanor Lavish. And she's just like, yes, you're in Italy. Have fun. Yeah. This is great. This is what happens when you go to Italy. Exactly. And I think, I don't know, I feel like that's very of the time, though, where you have, people are definitely straining against the kind of Edwardian proper, if you're a girl who does this, you're a sex worker. This is basically, you may as well just, go on the streets now, right? But it was interesting because it's kind of the one who's most freaked out by this is Maggie Smith's character, Charlotte, kind of implied that she's kind of lower middle class or middle class. Yeah. Like lower class than everyone else. She's like really freaking out about keeping order, but at the same time, she understands, or I think she's conflicted about it. I think she is conflicted because, as you say, she's there as Lucy's chaperone. So I think it's,
she couldn't afford to go on this trip on her own.
Right.
So she's there because Lucy's mother sent her on this trip and needed an older figure to make sure she doesn't get into trouble because it's, come on. And that's kind of what happens. So I'm not surprised that if you get yourself in trouble, I am so screwed because I kind of need your family's help.
And it seemed like something like this happened to her herself.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
She seemed to reference something. She's like, I know how these things happen or what happens when, a boy looks at you.
And the fact that she's a spinster, we don't know what her backstory is.
Right.
So yeah, I think there is that sort of, I have to keep a lid on things. I'm in a lower position here.
She's trying to keep class things as set as possible. She seems more freaked out about everything than anyone else.
Class is a big thing in this because, so you have Cecil, who is upper class of some kind.
Cecil is Daniel Day-Lewis.
Daniel Day-Lewis. So he's upper class of some kind.
And
At the very least,
just listen
he's
to the
French.
name,
I
of
know.
course. Cecil.
I'm sure
Cecil Weiss.
Cecil Weiss.
Yeah.
I'm sure he went to Eton or something, So he's above them. They're not aristocracy or lords or anything like that, but they're rich.
And he doesn't work. He makes a point of saying he doesn't work.
Right. A huge point of pride.
Yeah, that's my decadence, I guess.
Oh, God. Oh, I just want to... Then you've got Lucy Honeychurch, which I guess are upper middle class.
Yeah.
And she's got her brother and stuff, and he's not working either, but he seems like he'd be college age kind of.
Yeah.
So
this very much fits that Paul Fussell class, how everyone is acting.
Oh, that's interesting.
In that the upper middle class seem to be enjoying things more than the upper class or the middle class.
Huh. Okay.
Which is a thing that he talks about.
That's I still got to read that book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the Bible or anything.
No, but I think
But
it
I
is.
keep bringing it up.
You bring it up more than you do the Bible.
It's true.
So then you've got the Honeychurches, that's Lucy and her family and stuff, and then at the bottom underneath that, I guess, is the Emersons, because we don't really know what they do.
Yeah, we don't know anything about them.
I guess George is busy during the week because he comes back on the weekends, so I assume that means he's working somewhere in the city. Yeah. And whether his father's living in the cottage, and I don't know if that's because they mentioned his rheumatism, so I assume he's whatever labor he was doing, he can't do anymore.
There is a backstory in the book, but we don't have to go into that.
Okay.
Yeah,
and I'll read the book at some point. And then you've got Charlotte, the guardian, who and then you have servants. And what I find interesting in this movie is there are servants all over the place, and they never get to talk. And I have a feeling that's kind of how servants were treated at the time. So it's realistic, but it's funny watching this and just going.
Yeah, this isn't upstairs, downstairs. It's just upstairs.
It really is. The servants are there, but they don't get to say anything,
Which is great.
No, really.
I guess in Italy it's different.
It is different in Italy. But I think that's sort of...
And the movie itself is split into Italy and in England.
Yeah.
Which I guess we're going to talk about Rome. But I kind of like that split the way it is. It's two separate movies in a way.
Yeah, it is missing a middle part. And I find it interesting that it is. And I guess part of that was just budget. She goes to Italy. She meets George. They fall in love. But, they don't, there's nothing they can do about it because he's the summer boyfriend. There's a middle part that we don't have from the book,
right.
Which is she goes to Rome, meets Cecil, and he decides he's going to marry her because, he has to marry somebody.
Yeah, and she plays Beethoven.
And
Beethoven's a big part of it. Oh.
I feel like it's she's good enough.
Yeah.
She'll do for a wife. Mm-hmm. But because he's not really in love with her. I mean, you don't get the sense that he cares about her and is, because he's always, like I said, condescending about her, because she's a musician. She's not necessarily great. She doesn't have a great voice, but she does play music. I mean, I know what that's like. And, I don't know, you brought up Beethoven. I just get the feeling that he's just it's a neat little hobby, and it is a neat little hobby, but you don't have to be that way about it with people. All right. So you have this middle part that we don't really get in the film where, now, all of a sudden, the second half of the movie is they're back in England and she's engaged to Cecil.
The second we go to England, she's accepting his proposal.
Yeah.
And apparently there were 2 proposals before then that she turned down, and I guess in England she accepts. So.
I was talking to my mother this morning, and she's just like, where did that even come from? And I didn't have a good answer for her. And then, you explained, there's an entire like middle section of the book missing.
It didn't bother me because I felt like it set up that she's working against herself. So this all starts with like they get there and they're like, well, our room doesn't have a view. The Emersons are like, oh, we have a view and we're men. We don't care about views. And yeah.
Well,
And
I was going to say, is that true?
That's true. Who cares?
Oh my God.
There's just somewhere to sleep.
Oh.
Sorry. This
is why I book the rooms.
Exactly.
Yes.
But Charlotte is completely scandalized by this. Like, a man is talking. He's offering something to me and we will be in debt.
But I like the idea that all those like Victorian morals that Charlotte thinks she has to live by are falling away.
Yeah.
And the younger generations just does not really want to care about that. Like they're being told they have to care about that. But meanwhile, she's making out with, George in the poppy field.
Like for Freddie, it would be like, can we shower together?
Right.
But the thing is, like, Charlotte is definitely scandalized, but Lucy is she's internalizing it all too.
Yeah.
And she's constant rejecting George. And George is like, no, like something, like, it's one thing they witness a murder. Someone gets hit in the face and she faints and he catches her. And then it's like, we just saw something amazing and something amazing happened to us. Yeah, now we're together. And she's like, go away, you weirdo.
I mean, it's interesting because the film is like vignettes.
Yeah.
In fact, I like how they even have little title cards at the bottom running through the film, kind of imitating, we are a book. Here are some titles, like kind of giving you an idea of what this section of the movie is. She's fighting against herself the whole time. Like I like what the film does is it just gives you these little snippets of here they are together and like more and more and more. Like I think it builds really nicely their relationship without it, without her wanting she wants there to be a relationship. She knows she's not supposed to want this relationship, right? But what I like is that this isn't like a tortured story. There's somebody rents a cottage to the Emersons, and so now all of a sudden George is her neighbor, which is very inconvenient since she's getting married.
This is just out of a Hallmark movie.
I mean, it kind of is actually. So
Lacey Chabert was scandalized. Him.
So George ends up not just her neighbor, but good friends with her brother. And so there's a lot of hanging out with them. And then there's like the local Anglican vicar who is like friendly with all of them. And so it's who they met over in Italy.
Mr. Beebe.
By having him end up friends with her brother, it also helps kind of grow like why is she so into this guy? They just met, in Italy. And like they let like their relationship kind of develop naturally, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Whereas with Cecil, I don't know, man. Every time he's around, it's just like, man, why are you with this guy? Like, I'm not saying you gotta go with George, but like this guy is so oily. I don't know.
Like he's always condescending. He's always condescending to things, but like he's reading the book, that Eleanor Lavish book.
Oh, I love that scene.
I think he's envious of it all. He's envious of hot-headed romances in Italy and stuff.
I mean, he's making fun of it.
He's making fun of it, but I think that he's still reading it.
Yeah, that's true. Because she's getting married, George sees no point in sticking around because he's in love with her, of course.
Yeah.
And his father is not doing that great with his health. He decides, you know what, we're just going to move back into the city. At the same time, it's not that their affair is ever discovered like that. As you say, they're kind of hanging out with Cecil, and he starts reading Judi Dench, her character's romance novel that ends up being based on like the fling they have.
Yeah. And that's how Lucy realizes that Charlotte told Eleanor Lavish about
Judi Dench, yeah.
Yeah, Judi Dench about the kiss.
I think there's something about having her own events read back to her and just being forced to reckon with the fact that like I just don't love Cecil. I don't want this guy. I remember that kiss. This is what I want.
Part of her is like that, but a part of her just doesn't want to be found out.
Yeah. Well, no, of course not. In 1907.
Yeah, but also like George comes to her and tells her all this stuff.
Yeah.
He basically tells her what she's feeling and tells her like, oh, by the way, he just sees you as an object to put on the shelf. And then when she goes to Cecil to break it off, she basically says everything he said.
Right. She repeats all of George's words.
Yeah.
Because
and then Cecil is like, ooh, wow, I like those words.
Cecil's so weird.
I know.
I mean,
Well, I think he probably is gay.
oh, apparently there is a different, like a remake that focuses like on maybe Cecil is gay.
Yeah.
And I find that kind of interesting.
I don't know if it's in the book at all.
I'm
but,
so
yeah.
curious. I'd have to go back. I'd have to go and read the book. One thing I found interesting, though, when she breaks up with him, he doesn't have shoes on. Like, they're walking around the house. I guess it's her house?
Yeah.
They're walking around her house, and she's finally like, look, in that scene that you're describing, when she says, like, look, you don't treat me like a person, etc. I found it really, it's like a very odd scene. He lights a lamp, hands it to her so that she can go upstairs to bed after they break up. And first of all, I've never seen a breakup so calm. I've had some real knockdown, drag out breakups, and this was not one of them. But he doesn't have any shoes on.
Yeah.
So it's just him at the bottom of the stairs, kind of sitting there for a minute and then putting his shoes on. And I find that such an interesting scene.
I just wonder, like, is that a director's choice or is that his choice? It does seem like something that Daniel Day-Lewis would just come up with.
I have no idea. It's a really, like, I don't know if that's something from the book. I don't know if that was James Ivory's idea. I don't know if that was Daniel Day-Lewis's idea. But this idea of he doesn't have any shoes on, now he's got to put shoes on. Like, I mean, obviously, like, it's weird to think about feet as like a sign of vulnerability, but that's kind of what's happening here.
But also, it's like
it's almost like he had his Achilles heel exposed.
Yeah.
But
oh, that's a good one.
Right? Yeah.
That's cool. I saw it as like, he represents the society that she's clinging to. He has no way of expressing like disappointment or sadness or anger. I think just that simple, like pausing to put his shoes back on is
it's the most emotion
he can possibly show.
Right. Yeah. This man is so repressed.
Yeah.
Possibly even like sexually repressed. That this is like the biggest thing he can do is I have to put my shoes on. I find that a fascinating scene because of what you don't see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then he drops out of the picture, really. She finds out that George is going to move back to the city permanently and take his father and everything. And so she rushes into, she is brought actually to see older Mr. Elliott. No, not Elliott.
This is after she
gonna get their name
decides
right.
she's going to Greece with the Allen sisters, who were two other women that were on the tour. And she just wants to get away. She's like, she's like, this is a scandal. I don't want to be. And
that's what I would do too if I had to break off an engagement. It's just like, I'm getting out of the country. See ya. Greece would be a great place to go. Honestly. But then at the same time, she learns that the Emersons are going to move away. And it's like, wait a minute, I just dumped this dweeb.
Yeah.
And now you're leaving? They have this wonderful scene then between Helena Bonham Carter and Denholm Elliott, and it's sort of that.
Well, it's basically him saying, look, everyone's lying, and the only one that hasn't been lying is George, who's been just telling the truth the entire time. That's all he does.
He's just been himself,
yeah.
And he's just like, which is kind of a radical thing in that time period, to just be honest and open.
Yeah, and she's like, I have to get back to my my mother and cousin, and she's like, or they'll lose their trust in me, and he's like, why would they have any trust in you when you've been deceiving everyone, including yourself?
Yeah.
Which is such a great line.
I guess next thing you know, they cut to Italy.
Yeah, there's a lot of jump cuts.
Yeah, which is good. Actually, I think that's fine. I think that works great. Next thing you know, you cut to Italy, and they are there on their honeymoon, and it's great. They're back in Florence. They're back in the hotel.
They have a room with a view.
They have a room with a view, and they are making out hardcore in front of it.
Yeah. And there's a new Lucy who's like, she wants the room with a view.
Right, yeah. And they're
I think
like...
she's even called New Lucy.
And they're like, yeah, we have a room with a view, but we are not giving it up. Sorry. We took a lot to get here. You're going to have to just wait.
Yeah.
So, and that's it. That's the end of the film.
You know what?
What?
We skipped over the bathing scene.
We did skip over the bathing scene. This is the scene that my mother's just like, oh, they could cut this. And I'm like, no, they can't.
This isn't garbage.
This is not garbage.
This is great.
This is three naked men cavorting in a pond. Yeah. And I love it.
To me, it's like, it's this whole movie of English repressiveness.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, this is what happens when you take that away.
It is. No. That's what I love about this scene. So you have, as you say, all of these kind of, starch collars, suits in summertime and everything. And nobody's allowed to like touch each other or kiss if you want to be proper and all this stuff. And then you have this wonderful scene of like these guys come to a pond on the property, and they're like, yep, we're going for a dip. And because it's, 120 years ago, nobody owns bathing suits. That wasn't really a thing. And that really wasn't a thing. I mean, the thing is, like, men would go swimming would go swimming naked. If it was just a bunch of guys, like, I think social nudity was not weird at the time.
Yeah.
It like single-sex social nudity was not strange if you were a man. So, of course, they go swimming. And so there's something very natural about this whole scene. And it's a lot of fun. But it's also really interesting that, like, oh, my gosh, here is a scene of, like, frontal male nudity. And there's nothing...
They're basically acting like 3-year-olds splashing each other.
Yes, they're having a lot of fun, and they're just playing, and they're wrestling, and... it's funny because, like, I guess it's homoerotic without being erotic. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you never get the sense that, like, they're going to go off into the bushes and have sex or anything.
No matter how much some people may be wishing that
happened. Oh, my God. Yeah, right? Oh, no. I mean, it's sort of like, I have a feeling her brother was just like, hey, let's go. And I'm afraid he's just going to be disappointed. Yeah. God, I can't think of her brother's name in this.
Freddie?
Freddie, yes. Yeah. Thank you. But no, what I like about this scene, though, is, like, it's just something you don't see a lot of. Like, this type of nudity in film. I don't know why, because it's not...
Well, Hollywood. I mean,
I know
movie was unrated at the time because of this scene. And it's like, looking at it now, you're like, really? This? I know.
It's like, this is nothing. Like, okay, they're naked, but, like, even then... It's all wide shots.
Yeah. There's this great scene of the art in Florence, and suddenly it's like close-ups of all the penises and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like that was more of...
Oh, it was, exactly. It is funny you say that because, it's okay. I think, what, I'm thinking about it now. It's like, oh, it's so totally fine to see a penis on a statue.
Yeah.
But if you see a penis on a living being...
Yeah.
Oh, no. Now this is
a reverend.
Scandalous. A reverend. God knows they have no genitalia. But no, I think that's actually kind of interesting. So that even in the 1980s, to some extent, film is living with the mores of, the Victorian and Edwardian period of you can't show this.
Yeah.
And, so you want to show this in the United States. Now all of a sudden, like, it has to be unrated. We can't show a penis on screen, or you have an X rating. This is something children shouldn't see this, but you can take them to the art museum, and that's okay, because it's not even that the context is different. It's just like, that's art, that doesn't count.
Yeah.
And there's something very strange about that when you think about it. And I kind of think the film is sort of winking at the way that even in the 1980s they were still treating the human body. It's not like there hadn't been male genitalia in films before. Pornography's always existed, but even in like art films, yes, of course, that would show up, but there was still something so weird and scandalous about it when it did show up in films, right?
Yeah.
And it's still rare to see. Mm-hmm. When it does show up, it's extremely, like, played for shock, like in what is that, Dewey Cox, you get that one giant shot of, and it's like, and it's like a gross out joke, right?
Yeah.
And in here it's just, people, like, having this moment of, like, fun swimming in a pond. And of course, like, the whole thing is, it builds up to the fact that, because one of the guys swimming is George, and Lucy comes across them, and, it's this moment of, like, it's like embarrassment, but it's also like, hey, here's what you're missing.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's there for a reason. It's not like this scene isn't there for any reason at all. It's sort of, it's a fun vignette. It's also, like, kind of nudging her along.
And she talks about how when she was younger, she did the same thing with Freddie.
Right. Exactly. When she was young, when it wasn't inappropriate, she could go swimming in the pond too.
Yeah.
But now she's too old to do that, and this would be, like, scandalous if she did, and it's a type of scandal that I don't know that you could get away with if she wanted to keep her place in society. So yeah, I think it's actually, like, my mom's just like, why are they putting in this scene? It doesn't mean anything, and I'm like, actually, it means a lot.
Yeah.
But it doesn't just mean what it means in the film. It also means what it means at the time that this movie was coming out. Isn't it silly that there has to be social commentary on this?
Yeah.
This is just a body, and these are just guys out having fun, and whatever fun you want that to be. But there's nothing weird about this. There's nothing dirty about it. There's nothing actually scandalous about it. It's what you make it scandalous.
Yeah.
So that's why I think the scene of male nudity in A Room with a View is actually really important.
The thing is, it just reminded me of that, that luncheon.
Oh yeah, that's right. I kept trying to think
on the grass.
Yes.
It's that famous kind of like picnic scenes from like 1863 and.
Yeah, it's a Manet.
Yeah.
Like there were a couple scenes in here that felt like they were referencing, the paintings of the time period, right?
Yeah, like so when they first see the watering hole where they swim or bathe. Oh my God, that's where that what's Ophelia painting.
Oh, that's right.
I'm like, is that where they painted? Because it looks so much like it.
Yeah, it does. The Ophelia painting he's talking about is John Everett Millet's.
Yeah. Like I could see if she just fell into the water there, like it would be that painting.
Yeah, it would, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of this film that you feel like you're looking at paintings. Like it's a very beautiful.
I mean, it's England and Florence. That's where they all painted.
Yeah.
This one looked so good, and I wonder if the cinematography is as good in the others.
I don't know.
As this one, because this one was amazing, and I feel like it's kind of like, I don't know. It's just kind of the thrill of discovery or something. I don't know.
That's a good question. Yeah. Also, I mean, how do you make Italy look bad?
Well, yeah.
You can't.
But also the England stuff looks great too.
True.
So.
Yeah.
So I feel like the whole movie is kind of given away in this one scene in the beginning where Mr. B comes up to her and she's playing Beethoven and she's like, swinging her head around and she's getting into it and stuff. And he says, I always wonder how someone can fit in society and yet play Beethoven like that. And she's like, Charlotte hates when I play Beethoven. I get so irritated afterwards. And he's like, well, you get so riled up. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like that scene is like the movie in a microcosm there.
So that was A Room with a View, starring Helena Bonham Carter, Julian Sands, Maggie Smith, Denholm Elliott, Simon Callow, Judi Dench, and Daniel Day-Lewis. That's a freaking cast.
It's kind of what makes it all work is that everyone is like on top of their game in this.
Yeah,
it's great.
This is the best version of the type of film you think it is.
Yeah. Directed
by James Ivory, screenplay by Ruth Prawer, Jhabvala from the A.M. Forster novel, and of course it was produced by Ismail Merchant. Yeah, so you can follow us on social media. We are Mary vs. Movies on all of your major platforms except for Tumblr, where it's Mary versus the Movies. I don't know why. And so yeah, X, Instagram, TikTok. We have a TikTok. Dennis is making some fun little cartoons, excerpts from the show. The most recent one was from our Red Dawn episode. So yeah, follow us on TikTok. Let's see. We have a Patreon where you can help support the show. We're for $3 a month. You help cover the cost of. We have server costs. We have a Zoom account. Things like that. But in exchange for your $3 a month, you get access to a whole second podcast that we do, Hollywood Avalon, where we watch Arthurian movies, and so that is anything from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which of course is about the Holy Grail, The Green Knight, which is, a version of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight that some people really, really like, but is very traditional in its Arthurian themes. And then today or tomorrow, we're going to watch something called Unidentified Flying Oddball, which is some Disney movie from the late 70s. So I don't know, man, but you get to listen to us talk about them, talk about Arthurian literature.
I have low expectations, very low.
Mine are lower than yours. I'd have to dig to find them. So yeah, you can listen to us talk about the films and their Arthurian themes and mythology and all kinds of, fun stuff. So yes, that's patreon.com/Mary vs. Movies. We are on all of your major broadcasting platforms. I don't know. Although I just found out about, I have to actually upload it to Amazon Music, so I think I'll do that later today and get our RSS feed on there. But otherwise, we are on Apple Podcasts where you can rate and review the show, and we would really appreciate it if you did. We're on Spotify because, I don't know, you kind of have to be on Spotify. But, well, it's true. And we're on, I know, Joe Rogan, awful. Like, Spotify is an evil company, but, you know, that's how some people listen to podcasts. So, like, look, the world is full of terrible things. And nothing is truly ethical anymore. And so please don't yell at me for, you know, putting our thing on Spotify. We're not getting any money from them. We don't have ads on there. So, like...
We share trains with the Cecils.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. But anyway, so yes, you can otherwise get our RSS feed from our Libsyn page and plug it into whatever your podcatcher of choice is. Next week, you know, we flipped that coin, and so we already said we are doing Stephen Frear's My Beautiful Laundrette, which also has Daniel Day-Lewis in it. I think it'll be kind of fun to kind of, you know, take that film on after this one. So, all right. Until next time.
Come and have a bathe.